Hello everyone, welcome to the Solo Gaming Spotlight. If you've been following the channel, you know that I recently picked up Aventuria, the adventure card game, on a clearance sale from Noble Knight Games. And now that I played all 3 adventures in the game and played with all 4 of the characters that the game comes with, I thought I'd give you my thoughts on the game. Now, Aventuria is based off of the Dark Eye role-playing game, which is popular in Germany. But if you've ever played Dungeons and Dragons or most fantasy-themed role-playing games, then you'll notice a lot of elements that are similar that the Aventuria game brings to the table. I gotta admit, they did a good job. What it really features in this game is the combat, role-playing game combat. So, I don't know if you've ever played a role-playing game before, but for me personally, you end up with a sheet full of statistics. Your character's name, the equipment they have, all these spells, all these things. And I, in particular, don't really care for the role-playing aspect of hanging out, talking in a tavern to other characters. I want to be in that dungeon, using the spells that I have, the weapon and equipment that I have, fighting those monsters, gaining XP, leveling up, and gaining treasure. That's where I enjoy the game, and that's what this game captures. So first thing I want to talk about is the 4 characters to come with the game. They're playable right out of the box. Even though the decks are customizable, the characters come playable, which is nice. You have a dwarven blacksmith, a half-elf rogue, the mage, one of my favorites, and a ranger type, an elf scout. Each of these characters, like I said, they have customizable decks, and they have their different abilities. They all differ. They're the same abilities, like perception, willpower, things of that nature. With different numbers you have to roll below to end up successfully completing a test. On the other side of that, they have their deck restrictions. Like, for instance, the dwarf blacksmith, he's not allowed to have any spells in his deck. That makes sense. He has different, numbers he has to roll below in combat to hit on a ranged attack. A different one for a melee attack. He can't make any magical attacks. Very nice. The 4 characters in the box feel different playing them. And I like the option of being able to customize that deck. Haven't really checked or explored that area of the game out yet, so I don't want to talk about that. But it is exciting to have that option, especially if you like kind of deck building and like customizing some things. One of the things that is not a role-playing game element is card play. But this game does card play really good. You're going to have your 2 cards, your statistics to make checks with, and your character card. Of course, your health point marker, which is familiar if you've played hero rounds. And you have your deck. So you're going to shuffle your deck up in the beginning of the game. You're going to end up drawing 5 of these cards. You can mulligan as many as you want, or none at all. And then in the beginning of each turn, you get to draw 2 more cards. Now, the cool thing about this game is you can take up to 2 of these cards each turn and play them down in front of you. And these are going to be endurance points. And you need to turn them sideways and exhaust them, which is very familiar in other card games, to spend those points. And you're going to need to spend those points to play other cards out of your hand. You're going to need it to make attacks. The scenarios are going to have special actions you can take that you're going to need these endurance points to spend. So you are burning playable cards out of your hand. When you go through your deck, you don't reshuffle the discard pile. That's it. So the more familiar you get with a character and know what cards you really want to get out there, especially during like turns 2 through 5, where you need those endurance points to build up. But man, you got the good cards in your hands. Man, do I only want to put down 1 endurance point? I really want more endurance points because it's going to allow me to do more. But I really want these 2 cards in my hand, or 3 cards, or whatever. That is a really fun aspect to this game. I like that card play ability that this game brings. Another element that the game has is you take your turn with the cool card play, and then the enemy goes. The enemy is very simple to run. There's going to be a certain amount of enemies. You're going to roll a 20-sided die for them, and you're going to read off of their card. And it even captures the morale aspect that I remember from D&D. So you'll usually have a boss and you'll have some henchmen, they're called, different enemies in the group. And then once you kill that boss, usually your higher rolls in this game, the lower you roll, the better off you are. Unless, of course, you're getting damage against you, then you want them low as well. But most of the time on a 20, if the leader's already been killed, it's like a built-in morale check, and the monsters are going to end up fleeing and running away from the battle. I thought that captured an aspect well, where they're going to stick around while their leader's still there, but once he's gone, they may end up running away. Nice touch. There is also a timer counter, which controls the difficulty of the game. Now, on the core box, it comes on, there's 4 different levels you can play on. Easy, normal, difficult, and legendary. I've gotten my butt kicked on easy plenty of times already. The more you play with the character, the better you're going to get, and then you can end up taking on normal. Difficult and legendary, I'd imagine you have to customize your deck to be able to take those on. So this timing element, say you play on easy and you start the game and there's 10 of these timer tokens on the thing. You take your turn, enemy takes their turn, a timer token comes off. Maybe when there's only 9 tokens left, now you got to pull an event card, which can trigger some sort of event during combat. Maybe you have to pull a leader action card where the leader's going to do something. Maybe another henchman comes out. There's also there's scenario specific actions you can take. For instance, in the playthrough I did of Saving Sylvana, there's this invisible kobold who is a pain in the neck that's going to be healing the other monsters that you're damaging, because you can't damage him at first. You have to guess his name. That's a special action you can get. If you can guess this kobold's name, and you're going to use different skill checks to try and do that. And once you guess his name right, he's going to be able to be damaged, and then you can take him out. But in the meantime, as you're hitting the other characters or the other enemies, he's just doing shenanigans, and you want to get rid of him. He's a pain in the butt. So that allows, in my mind, for such cool custom scenarios down the road, that there's so much design space inside this game with those timer tokens and different customizable cards that they can put in. And for one thing that does come to mind is, I don't know if you ever played Lord of the Rings, the living card game, but the different adventures that they had in that games, they could feel different. I know one in particular that stands out is the Murder at the Prancing Pony. Now, the game loop design allowed for, this card came out, this scenario pack came out, and it gave a clue-like feel to the game, where you have to try to figure out who committed the murder and where was the location they committed the murder at. I'm pretty sure that's it. It's been a long time, but I'm almost sure that you had to figure those 2 elements of it. But it made that scenario felt so much different from the other scenarios, and I feel that the design space in this game is very similar. I feel that they can do things with this game that gets me excited for what the future expansions hold for this game. One thing I do have to note, which is my biggest complaint about this game, is if you've ever played a role-playing game, you meet somewhere, Game Master usually gives you some backstory, and then you gather all your stuff and you go head into a dungeon or castle or wherever, and you end up, doing some skill checks. Maybe you want to search for secret doors or look for traps, things of that nature. Make some dexterity checks, strength checks if you want to lift some things or do whatever, climb a wall. And then eventually you get into a room, there's going to be monsters there, you end up fighting them, you gain XP, you gain treasure, and then you go on exploring the dungeon. And you have more of these combats and just more. 2 out of 3 adventures in this game is just that, a couple checks in that one little combat. And then the main adventure, if you want to call it that, is 3 of these combats strung together into a story. It's like you go to a restaurant and you end up ordering a steak, and then the waiter comes out and he's got this big silver platter, big game box. He opens it up. There's this little piece of steak the size of a quarter. Now, if you're a vegan, you ordered a big salad and you got a baby carrot. But damn, that carrot is seasoned well. And I don't care how good the meal is, I'm still left unsatisfied. And that's kind of where I feel with this. And I don't know if it's marketing genius or not, or the subconscious of mine dictating to me that a big box like this should have more game in it. I mean, it's got under 300 cards. It's got like 8 dice, some cardboard tokens, and a poster that's a game mat. That's it. So that's my beef with the game. There's just not enough game. Where's the game at, man? This game probably should have came in a box the size of maybe the Unbroken box or maybe even the Warp's Edge box. If you're familiar with those games, you'll know what I'm talking about. Now, I know that the box allows for future expansions to fit in it. I get it. Just, I feel like there should have been more game in the box. I would have really liked 4 or 5 of those short adventures that it came with, and a nice like 7 to 12 long story strung together combats with maybe an epic boss at the end that maybe you needed to collect some different treasures and equipment along the way to be able to take him on and beat him or them, depending on the design. That would have been awesome. 10 out of 10. Let me touch on another thing, because I want to leave on a positive note, and there are a couple things that I did forget to mention that I want to mention. That little 3-part adventure that they have, so they're called chapters, and in between each chapter is kind of like you setting up camp for the night in a role-playing game where you're resting. And depending on how many timers were left on the timer card when you got done the adventure, you're going to get a certain amount of respite points that you can spend to maybe heal your character or gain these fate tokens, which you can spend to reroll dice, so it does a good job on mitigation because it is a d20 roll in the game. Anytime you miss on an attack, you can get one of these fate tokens that allow you to reroll a die. In the duel mode, they also allow you to spend them for an endurance point or to draw a card. And that's awesome. That gives you more decision space. So I just went ahead and house ruled that in my game. It makes it more decision space, the better off in my opinion. And I don't mind making house rules to make the game more fun. And so that's what I did. Another thing you can spend the respite points on is you got to have a couple, I think you have to have 4 respite points, which, is a good amount, to pull a specific card out of your deck and have it right in your hand to begin the next adventure. Another really cool thing you can spend it on is you can practice or you can train. The practice card is for your skills. The training card is for fighting. So in that next chapter, if you get a training card, you put 5 tokens on it, and maybe you make a die roll for a melee attack and you need a 15 to hit and you roll a 17. Well, you can spend 2 of those tokens from your training card to reduce that number down to a 15 and now have a successful attack. I like that. That's really good. So if you own Aventuria and you have some of the expansions and have played them, drop down in the comments below, what I should be looking for. I'm not interested in the duel mode whatsoever. I am looking forward to more combat scenarios. I want to see what they can do in regards to that aspect. So if you've played some of the expansion content and there's something you really liked, let me know down in the comments so I can do my own research on it. If you've liked this video so far, please give a like. And if you are interested in subscribing to the channel, I'm going to be covering fantasy content. I like games that have hand management and card play in it, as well as combat. I'm drawn to combat for some reason. Deck building and deck construction ability. I'm not necessarily into constructing my own decks, but I do like the ability to be able to swap out cards and have some customizability in that area. Anyways, that is Aventuria, the adventure card game, and my thoughts on it. What a bargain that I found on clearance. Until next time.